If you like knights in shining armor, please consider taking a moment to have a look at my current crowdfunding campaign. With this campaign, I'm trying to fund the production of a full-plate Northern Italian steel knightly harness to use for video production, to test a knightly armor to the extreme, to test the mobility, to use it in combat, to use it while horseback riding, and make a lot of content, perhaps even Dark Souls in real life. A $5 donation could make all of that happen. And big thanks to all those who have already donated. Noble ones, what a pleasure! One of the questions I've always had has to do with the Dark Souls universe. You see, I'm a big fan of the game. New iteration comes out, and there I am, running around like a little excited tyke. That is until I die 50 times in a row. Then the game normally successfully turns me into a snivelling little mophead. The question has to do with the shield, the default shield that the knight wields, and the way he grips it. Usually, when we think of a medieval triangular shield, most people have that iconic strapped to the arm image, which, although it wasn't the only way to grip such shields in the Middle Ages, it is authentic. And yet, when a triangular shield is strapped to your arm, if you relax said arm and lower the shield, you can clearly see how it naturally goes sideways, with the bottom point facing backward. The triangular shield in the Dark Souls universe behaves differently. Due to the sort of grip the shield is mounted with, the moment you relax your arm, the shield goes upside down, with the bottom point now looking up. Now, quite a lot of people asked me if that was historically accurate. The grip, the shield shape, did shields built like that really exist in medieval Europe, or did the developers of the game actually come up with that design? And if they did, if that's something that they have excogitated, would it really work in real life? Oh, and by the way, mate, you really need to spruce up the place a bit, you know? I mean, no disrespect, of course, but everybody in this world is blue, everything is bleak and gloomy, the waters are all murky. No wonder when the dragon shows up, he decides to burn everything to the ground. Now, can you blame him now? Just get some Christmas decorations, you miserable sod. Okay, so the point of this video is that we're going to have a discussion to try to find out if the design of the shield in Dark Souls makes sense from a medieval perspective. Now, to properly address that question, I have invited a person who's really knowledgeable, not only about swords and shields, among other things, but history in general, Roland. Roland also has a very nice YouTube channel, and if you like mine, you probably will enjoy his, so check it out. You will find a link in the description below. And he also has an amazing Patreon page, and he is a fantastic illustrator. So check out his Patreon page too.
Hello, my name is Roland of Demicator, and I'm delighted that my friend and patron, the Metatron, has invited me to contribute to this video. Now, I know exactly nothing about video games, but I do have some expertise with historical shields.
Now, for those of you who are new to the community of the sword and you don't normally watch my content, I'd like to underline the fact that both Roland and I fully understand that this is a game and it's a fantasy setting. I mean, you've got undead running around, you've got dragons, you've got magic and whatnot. Now, be that as it may, this is neither a critique nor an attack towards the game, so don't let this video rattle you too much. This is just an opportunity to answer a question that I was asked by my community, and in the meantime also learn a thing or two about real medieval history through the means of a video game that we really like, perhaps also finding ways to ameliorate it. So, question number one. It might sound obvious, but it is not. What was the purpose of a shield in real life?
Let me start with a few general remarks. Shields had to fulfill two purposes. First of all, they were designed to offer protection, so they were a piece of mobile armor that could be moved around the bearer's body to close opposing lines of attack. And secondly, they could also be used as a weapon in close combat, to either strike at the opponent or pin him in order to control him. So we are either looking at all-rounders or we are looking at shields that are optimized for one of these two purposes. For example, Germanic or Viking Age round shield is a perfect weapon in close combat. The stick is an extension of the arm that could be used in exactly the same fashion as a weapon, say an axe or a sword. However, It's not so great on horseback because the flat board can easily be levered open by a spearman, for instance. So whenever a military would focus on fighting on horseback or in formation, then the protective function of the shield becomes more eminent, and thus the contemporaries of the Viking raiders from the north, the Carolingians and the Anglo-Saxons, favored domed round shields because the domed surface offers better protections, as any missiles that come in would more easily glance off and any spears would be deflected instead of levering open a shield. Now, whatever the primary purpose of any specific shield design, it has to support perfect body mechanics. Any weapon or shield that becomes a hindrance in combat is actually a useless design. So let us look at the shield in Dark Souls. Now, apparently this is a heater-shaped shield, or triangular shield. There is some edge reinforcement running all around the edge of the shield. The inside seems to be faced with some kind of sheet metal. There's some kind of metallic shine. And then there are two straps very close to the top edge that are crossing each other, and that's where the shield is actually gripped. And then below there, beneath that, there's an arm pad, a cushion that is aligned vertically on the center line of the shield.
In the Dark Souls universe, even undead creatures still carry around weapons and shields and use them appropriately. Whether they are still intelligent or whether they do it out of some instinct mixed up with some sort of muscle memory from when they were alive, they clearly understand attacks can hurt them. Evidence of that is the fact that whenever you're trying to introduce them to the business end of an axe, they will respond to the threat by trying to protect themselves with a shield. Question number 2. Is the overall shape of the shield historically correct, and how often were triangular shields used in the Middle Ages?
A triangular shield design is, of course, absolutely authentic. Heater-shaped shields started to appear in the late 13th century, and by the 14th they were commonplace. A few examples survived the ages, and all of these are of a laminated composition with a wooden core, usually consisting of planks butted together, and these were wrapped in facings made of parchment and or linen, usually both. They are not particularly thick, and they never ever were made from steel, simply because that would prove way too heavy, and thus a shield like that would become a hindrance in combat at one point and thus qualify for a bad design.
The material of the shields. This is really one of my favorite topics. Here's the thing, as Roland said, full steel triangular heater shields, no. The reason being, as he said, they would be too heavy. But the other reason is, well, wood does the job quite well. Now, if we look at shields as a whole, so not just triangular shields, but shields as a whole, you will find some shields that were made entirely of metal. Bucklers, for example, sometimes they're made of wood with a steel boss, but other times you can find them being made entirely of steel, including the handle. But a buckler is a completely different shield, and obviously it's a lot smaller than a triangular shield. And still, if I had the choice, I would go for a wooden one. Lighter and still very effective.
This is a replica of a surviving 14th century shield, which today is kept at Marburg University Museum. The remnants of strap fastenings on the back of the original allowed for the reconstruction of this strap arrangement here. Now, as you can see, there are no straps crossing each other. This is because it doesn't really pose any advantage. With these two straps here, I can slip my arm through it if on horseback, and then the shield would be secured to my forearm. At the same time, I can use the very same straps to hold the shield in a center grip, much like a buckler. Also, if the shield straps are made from supple leather, like was the case with this particular specimen, you can twist and roll them to adjust length. So if you want them to be tighter, you just twist them a couple of times and then the strap becomes shorter and you can adjust length this way. Shields held by a double strap are shown in period art quite often, but it's usually impossible to decide whether these straps are actually crossing each other or if they are mounted next to each other. But in terms of construction, there's a really good reason for mounting them next to each other, because if you do so and if the terminals of the straps are fastened to the shield at an angle, then the strap will naturally fold up. And that's a historical system which I have observed on a shield in Marburg University Museum, and I use that system on these two straps here. And as you can see, the terminals here, they are mounted at an angle which will naturally fold up the strap. So if you have to change grip from one side to the other for whatever reason in combat, then it's much easier to slip into the straps. In particular, if you're wearing any hand protection, say mail mittens or so, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, due to the versatility of shields and the sometimes quite complex strap arrangements, you will find depictions of overlapping straps at times. As confirmed by period depictions, shields like this were used both on horseback as well as in single combat, and that means they were serving both purposes. They were all-rounders, they were used both as a piece of mobile armor, but they could also be extended forward and used in single combat, used as a weapon offensively.
Now, shields can be used both offensively and defensively in the Middle Ages in real life. Now, that's relevant to our discussion about the shape and grip of the shield in the game Dark Souls, because both things can be done with a shield in-game, meaning that you can use it defensively, of course, to defend yourself from an enemy attack, or you can use it offensively in order to trigger a counter-attack mechanism that will leave your opponent open. Now, the design should allow for both things. Right, so coming back to the knight in Dark Souls, considering the grip and the way it's mounted and the fact that there is an arm pad, vertical arm pad, suggests that the shield should be used with the arm in this position. Now let's see what Roland has to say about that.
As I said earlier, a shield should support good body mechanics. In martial arts, the human body is used to its optimum. And when applying forward pressure, there's a particular position of the arm that aligns your bones, your skeleton, in such a manner that you are using your body to your optimum, because you want to achieve maximum result with minimum effort. So regardless whether you're standing in a line and you are using your shield as a piece of mobile armor, moving it to close attack lines as required, or whether you are in close combat extending your shield forward at times, your shield design should allow exactly for these actions. So this is how we can judge whether the shield design in Dark Souls is any good. The Dark Souls shield sports an arm pad, a cushion that is aligned vertically, which suggests that the shield is supposed to be used with the forearm aligned vertically too. Now, if I want to resist any pressure and my forearm is perfectly vertical, that's a super weak position. Try to make push-ups with your elbows close to each other. That doesn't work. It's super stressful. And thus it's bad body mechanics, and so a vertical arm pad on a heater-shaped shield doesn't make sense. There are examples for vertical arm pads, but they are on an altogether different shield design. And as you can see, these shields were supposed to be extended with the hand reaching forward. So again, here we see good body mechanics and a specific shield design that supports them. I've also found one depiction of a shield that looks quite similar to the one that we see in Dark Souls, and the shield bearer is actually holding the shield with his forearm aligned vertically. However, that's a situation prior to actual contact, so he is in the process of advancing and he's just simply lifting the shield next to his head, closing the opponent's line of attack. What is also interesting about that depiction is that in addition to the top strap, where his hand is holding the shield, there is another strap for the arm to give sufficient control when wielding that particular shield. If I want to adopt a strong position with a heater-shaped shield, then my forearm has to be in an angled position, not a vertical one. Test it by, say, pushing a car. It's the position that you naturally adopt. Now, this angled position is also reflected by the position of arm pads on heater-shaped shields. They do not occur very often, but occasionally we do see them in miniatures. And as you can see, they are either horizontal or they come at a slight angle. And that, of course, reflects the angled position that I was suggesting for shield action earlier. Now, when the character in Dark Souls actually lifts his shield, his forearm is in an angled position. But what is really odd is that it seems that he has a lot of control of this particular shield when he lifts it. Now, the strap on his shield, or the two crossing straps on his shield, are so close to the top edge that they are definitely above the center of gravity of the shield. But that would mean that if I'm now simulating holding this shield above the center of gravity, that the lower end is tilting in action and can easily be levered open. There's actually not much control of the shield if it's held by one strap only that is placed above the center of mass. If you have a strap that is located above the center of mass, you do need additional points of control so that the shield does not tilt forward in combat. And this could be either an arm strap or another option is a so-called guiche strap that runs around the neck and helps the fighter to have superb control over his shield. So if a shield is supposed to be used with one hand only, and if it's a heater-shaped shield, then it would make sense to place the straps so that the combatant can actually control the complete mass of the shield. And it doesn't make sense to put a strap close to the top edge because that is above the center of mass and thus will never provide the control that is required. Also, as I said, the shields are sometimes used as weapons too, so heater-shaped shields were sometimes extended forward, and while they're being extended forward, they do cover the sword hand. Now look, if I'm using a working historical design and I extend this forward, you can see that this edge here is tilting forward to maximum extension, and that just perfectly safeguards my sword hand as I extend my weapon. So when designing a shield, be it for a game or a movie, it does make sense to closely study extant originals and the thousands of manuscript illustrations that survive from the period when people actually fought with these shields, because those images will show functional designs. In regards to the Dark Souls shield, it does not support good body mechanics, neither when used as mobile armor nor when used offensively as a weapon. Thus, the bottom line is that's not a functional design. Thank you very much for your interest.
But why would that matter when talking about fantasy setting? Well, here's the thing. Functional designs have a timeless quality. And we do have a certain amount of logic within fantasy as well. Let me give you the example of the flying dragon and the flying peasant. Well, when we see in any fantasy setting a dragon flying, we accept it. Why? Well, of course, it's a creature of imagination, and yet it makes sense that they fly. They've got huge, massive wings, and probably a little bit of help through their magic. So whenever we see dragons flying, we don't really laugh about it. We consider it to be possible, plausible. But what if I told you that in my specific setting, all peasants can fly? Doesn't mean that they have got wings. They can just fly. Just the peasants. That does make you giggle a little bit, doesn't it? Why is the notion that random flying peasants is crazy while we have accepted fire-breathing flying dragons? Because from a logical point of view, it makes no sense that only peasants fly. I mean, they don't have wings, so why can't everybody fly? Why can't normal people fly, or, tax collectors for that matter? So even though we could explain it, saying that, magic allows them to, still it's weird. So in other words, the illusion of fantasy still needs to play by some rules. If it strains too much from credulity, it won't work. This is why I believe that a optimally designed shield, even though it's a fantasy setting, would still make sense, because these people, fighting is all they do. And most of these people are using equipment, even if they are undead, they're using equipment that they were using when they were alive. So this equipment had to be optimized for what it was supposed to do in order for it to work. And unfortunately, when you do understand a thing or two about medieval weapon designs and armor designs, you can immediately see when a specific design is not functional. Even the typical argument, well, but the hero here has super strength, wouldn't really work in this case. You can be the strongest person in the planet, still the shield would tilt, as Roland pointed out. And even if your amazing strength would allow you to still use not optimized design, why not using something optimized? I mean, at the end of the day, why wasting that extra strength you've got? Alright, well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. Big thanks to my friend Roland Varzeka. Thank you so much for your help. It really was significant in this case. If you liked this sort of video and you want to see more, perhaps talking about other shields or even weapons in the Dark Souls series or armor again, let me know by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and help me raise those views, because if the video reaches a certain threshold of views, then I will turn it into a series. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.